All right, welcome everybody to Bob Mac 3D, our live stream here. My name is Brad, and
And
with
I'm Bob.
me is Bob. Bob, I gotta
That
remember.
way, yes, that way. Well, you can reverse your camera.
We're here to talk about our new Kickstarter, World Revolution. So we'll start off, Bob, I'll ask you, the first basic question: why World Revolution?
Lots of very good reasons to do World Revolution. So, just a bit of background. When the communists first came to power, the doctrine, if you like, was that this revolution that they just had was going to carry to the entire world, and the entire world would be full of good communists. And the communists in the Soviet Union carried that doctrine forward at least to the 70s and into the early 80s. So that's the sort of etymology, if you like. Etymology? Yeah, I think that's the word we want. Etymology of it. So we decided that we were going to do a bunch of Soviet models that sort of sat in that period, in the early post-war period where the communists were ascendant. Vietnam was conquered. And it seemed like a good title for it. Now, this gives us the opportunity to do lots of interesting kit. And not just kit for the Soviets, but this is the stuff they exported all over the world. The T-55 was the most produced tank ever, at least at one point. I think it's been exceeded by the T-72 now. And they sent them to all sorts of places. And you'll have seen pictures of the Yom Kippur War with the Syrians and the Egyptians using T-55s. You'll have seen the Iran-Iraq, pictures from the Iran-Iraq War. Iranians, they captured them, but they used them. And the Iraqis using T-55s. Angola, T-55s. Every single little crappy Third World War you've ever seen, T-55s. And not forgetting Vietnam. Although, to be absolutely fair, those were T-54s, but that's on the stretch goal list. And we've got other almost as widely used things. We've got the BTR-60, incredibly widely used APC. We've got BTR-50, again, used by almost everybody, including the Vietnamese. What else we got? The ZSU. If you were to ask people to sort of draw or think of a mobile anti-aircraft, it'd be the ZSU. It's the most famous anti-aircraft gun there is. And I've missed one, haven't I? Hang on, I've gone blank. What have I missed? PT-76. Again, exported all over the place. So it gave us an opportunity to do some really common vehicles that people could use for armies that weren't just the Soviet Union. So if you're into Arab Israeli, this is the Kickstarter for you. Iran-Iraq War, Kickstarter for you. Vietnam War, Kickstarter for you. Hey, it must be my turn to ask a question, mustn't it? Is that how it works? Yes, that's how it works. Right. Okay. So talking of things that come from Vietnam, do you want to explain a little bit of the thinking behind doing a Vietnam add-on?
Yeah. So this Kickstarter is our first time that we've done an add-on. And when we were working on the World Revolution core vehicles, T-55 and the ZSU and the BT-76, we started thinking that, wow, all these vehicles also appear in Vietnam, although they weren't quite the right versions, right? So T-55 didn't show up in Vietnam. There was a T-54. Technically, it was the Chinese version. And so we thought to ourselves, well, we could spend the time and sculpt those specific vehicles. PT-76 is a great example. The Vietnam version has a different turret set up to it, has different machine guns set up to it that didn't appear on the normal PT-76, but did in the Vietnam version. And so we were talking about how to address this, and it really came down to, we'll spend the time, do it right, but just offer it as an add-on. So those people that game the Vietnam period can get, well, hey, here's the example, right? The Vietnamese version of that particular vehicle, in this case, the Chinese version of the T-54.
Type 59 is what you're looking for.
What's that? Type 59.
Type 59 is what you're looking for, yes.
So this is a Type 59. and then the Vietnamese version of the PT-76 and the BTR-50. The nice thing about the BTR-50, it comes with the anti-aircraft gun in the back. And what I always find fascinating about the North Vietnamese in the war is they're always focused on anti-aircraft, right? It was their number one nemesis was the, American air power during the war. So that you always see foliage on the tanks to try to camouflage themselves, and any kind of anti-aircraft gun they can have. In fact, one of the key differences of the PT-76 between the regular version and the Vietnam version is the big anti-aircraft machine gun mounted on the turret. So the add-on seemed a perfect way to address the specifics of the Vietnam War. Speaking of specifics, we always do a stowed versus plain pledge level. And Bob, can you tell us more about the stowage in this particular Kickstarter?
Well, one of the great things that differentiates this from our previous sort of Soviet Kickstarters is these vehicles were used all over the place. Now, Soviets, not big fans of stowage, or at least if you and all the Cold War propaganda pictures are all neatly, if they've got a bit of stowage, they've got one top. It's a bit dull. But because we're doing tanks that were used in real wars, that gives us all sorts of extra options. So, for example, on the T-55, we've got a jerry can rack that goes on the back of the turret, which was used by the Egyptians. We can be quite a lot more generous with the tarps, because you see a lot of Egyptian, Iraqi, Syrian vehicles with, well, the crew's bedding basically strapped to the outside. So that makes it that much more interesting. And obviously, in the Vietnam War, when you're under threat of American air power, your logistics isn't quite as it should be. So you see the Type 59 with spare tracks festooned all over it because they ain't getting them anywhere else. You see the PT-76 with spare wheels. And again, you see bits of the crew's kit strapped onto the back of the turret. And of course, the fact that we're modeling the kit actually on the model means we can put the straps in place. We can make sure it hangs properly, which is really quite difficult to do with third party and add-on stowage. So it looks like it belongs there. So I'm quite proud of those Vietnamese ones, especially. They do look like they look in the photographs. So moving on, talking of things that are specialist, we've got a turbo backer model out, which is the T55AD. How about you tell us something about the T55AD, Brad?
I'll bring up the T55AD. When we started this Kickstarter, we were talking about what to offer to the turbo backers. And if you don't know, the turbo backer is a special tier that we offer, and that tier gets a special model. This model we will not sell anytime or anywhere else other than on this Kickstarter. And that model this time was the T55AD. And to be honest, in the beginning, I didn't know a ton about it. I knew it existed and it was out there. But when we did the research on the T55AD, I was surprised to find that it was the Soviets who first started playing with the idea of active protection for their vehicles. So it's completely fascinating. The T55AD is designed to defeat oncoming missiles. Of course, NATO at the time was all enthralled with missiles, right? TOWs and swing fires and all those types of things. And so they were looking to protect their tanks. The next fascinating thing about this, I really thought this was neat, is the reason this really was put together was because of the naval troops for the Soviets. The naval troops were looking, they wanted a new tank, right? The T-55 started to age, and of course the Army was getting, right, the T-64, the T-72, all those fun vehicles out there, and they wanted one. Unfortunately, everything they had designed to land these types of vehicles on the beach were designed for the T-55. And so they were trying to figure out how to use the T55 still, but protect it more. And so this was one of their solutions. They only made about 300 of these, as I understand it, but because it got replaced with the T55, what version is it, Bob, that has all the contact armor on it?
AMV.
AMV. So not long lived, but really a fascinating idea. And it is a really cool model if you get in and look at all the detail here on the missile launchers and what have you. It's a really pretty neat vehicle. It really is.
I don't think they're actually missiles. I think it's actually in effect a big shotgun.
Oh, is it really?
Yeah.
I figure it doesn't have to go far, I guess. All I know is you don't want to be next to this. My favorite detail is there's a light on the back of this. I don't know if you can see this. There's this little light on the back, and it was there it turned on when the system fired, as if, right, you're behind this thing as an infantryman and you need to know when this thing's going to go off so you can hit the ground or something. But I figure if you were in the wrong place and that light goes off, you probably don't have enough time to.
I'm thinking it's you want to know if you're in front of it, you want to know. It's not so bad behind.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
if you're in front of it, perhaps there's no way you're getting out of the way in time. I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny that they added the light for some reason. Somebody had some kind of concern about it, so it's interesting. It really, really is. Speaking of details, Bob, you sculpt tremendous amount of details on these vehicles. Tell me more about that.
A long time ago, well, I still do actually, but a long time ago, I first started sculpting for Heroics and Ross. And those of you that know Heroics and Ross know that they're 6 mil, that's 1/300th. And there's only so much detail you can put into a 1/300th model. So I had the utter hankering to do something in bigger scale so I could put more detail in it. It was beginning to get just a little bit frustrating doing the little ones. I love doing the small scale models. Okay, don't get me wrong. But I wanted to think, I thought I could do so much better than this. So when I had the opportunity to work with Brad and do models that went up to 156, I thought, right, that's what we're going to do. We're going to try and put in as much detail as we possibly can. So that's always been my philosophy. Put as much detail in as you can. Conversant with it being able to be seen at a reasonable distance on the tabletop. There is a minimum size I'm prepared to go down to, but it's quite small. So that's what I tried to do. This natural sculpting isn't that difficult. Okay, I mean it's a small rivet or a big rivet. Drawing a rivet's about the same. You just have to do slightly more if they're smaller. It's not that isn't the hard bit. The hard bit is finding the sources. So there are several things you need if you're going to do this level of detail. Firstly, you need a decent set of plans, and they're not easy to find in all cases. One of the difficulties and one of the reasons it took me so long, the T55 AD, no decent plans, or at least no decent plans I could find, and I'm pretty good at looking. You need preferably 4 or 5 different walkarounds, just so you can see everything close up from multiple angles. And I can guarantee you, even if you've got 4 or 5, you'll be one view you can't blooming find. And it also has to be said, not all walkarounds have top views. So you spend a lot of time looking at photographs, making sure you can see. For example, I'm working on the T55 AM at the moment. What does it look like behind the eyebrow armor? Oh, yes, there's a million pictures of the eyebrow armor from the front. But of course, I want to see behind it. And that sort of level of research can take a lot of time. And the third thing you need is you need in-service pictures, because items in museums tend to be missing stuff or have been badly restored. So I'm really keen that the models our customers get are representations of what the in-service model actually looked like. And that also leads us onto the stowage again, because real-world models, they're stowed. How about that for an answer?
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, yeah.
Talking of things that are cool, those people that have seen the pictures we've been posting up on the Bob Mac 3D discussion group on Facebook and in other places will have noticed that we've got some crew figures. Tell us about the crew figures.
Yeah, I'm very excited about the crew figures. As most of you know, our German Kickstarter, we teamed up with a sculptor named Combat Octopus who makes absolutely fabulous figures. He's known, though, for more ultra modern figures, more, 2010 forward. And we had a great time with him. He does a great job. But then we teamed up with Flank March Miniatures, which are focused on Cold War. And that turned out to be just fantastic. The sculpts he made for the Soviet, he started out doing in his Kickstarter for the British Cold War, he made figures for the vehicles that we made for the British, right? The FV432, the Chieftain, Scorpion. Those were fabulous crew figures, lots of animation, great detail, really came out nice. So we invited him to produce more crew figures for our Soviet set. Now, quick note, his next Kickstarter is going to be Soviet infantry. So I'm really excited about that one because it goes with everything we're working on here today.
When's it going live? When can people get it?
Yeah, that I don't know, but it will be in a few months. This is the PT-76 figure. I love the flags and the figures, but these figures are just fabulous. And I can't state it enough. They are so easy to paint. The way he sculpts, the way he puts it together, you can just paint these easily. I really, really enjoy them. That doesn't just go for the crew figures. It goes for all his figures. They're really, really a joy to paint. So it's really, really nice to have a nice set of figures. And it is our plan going forward to forge this alliance with Flank March to do figures for all our Kickstarters going forward.
Yeah, and it only costs $10.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it's a $10 add-on total.
It is a bargain without a shadow of a doubt.
And these figures are in 15 mil, 20 mil, and 28, and they all print out, look great in all the different scales. Speaking of different scales, Bob, tell us about how we offer our models.
Nice segue. Scaling models. Well, so broadly, we mainly work in 3 scales, which is 15 mil or 1/100th if you prefer. 20 mil, which we're choosing to interpret as 1/72nd, and 28 mil, which we're choosing to interpret as 1/56th. And we will provide you with pre-supported models already pre-scaled, so you can just dump them in your slicer and print them out, which is lovely. Being 3D printing, you can scale up and you can scale down, and you can take this the nearest pre-supported scale and just rescale it. It's just a ratio, but if you can't get your head around the maths, if you Google 3D printing scale conversion, there's spreadsheets and things on the web that'll do it for you. So let's talk about scaling up first. You can scale up to whatever size you want. You could conceivably, if you could find a printer big enough, do it 1-to-1. Having said that, I exaggerate the small details because I know these are gaming pieces and they've got to be viewed across the table. Okay, and I want them to look good at gaming distances. So that means the bigger you scale them up, they're going to start to look clunky. Now, it's up to you. They will scale beautifully, and you won't notice the difference up to 1/48th. And 1/48th is about as big as 28 mil people go. I think I've seen them printed at 1/35th, and the guy that did it seemed more than happy. Yeah. So you can pretty much print them at the scale you want. You have to think a little bit about, do I mind the exaggerated detail as you get bigger and bigger? But for all wargaming scales, you'll be sorted. Or at least all large wargaming scales, you'll be sorted.
Now, I've seen them printed all the way down to 6 mil, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the individual who entered it into the painting competition, who posted his pictures on our Facebook group, was that 135th?
Oh, I'm not sure. No, I think he was 156. He won a prize though.
Yeah,
In fact, he's not the only person that's won a prize with a Bob
yeah.
Mac 3D model. So that was most gratifying.
Oh, very, very gratifying. Yeah.
So scaling down, you've got the opposite problem. I don't think you'd have a problem scaling down to about 150th, 144. I reckon you'd do that no problem, and people have without altering the models. Want to go smaller than that? You've got to be aware there might be a couple of issues. It's been done and people have been more than happy with the models they printed. You just have to be aware that it gets a bit thin and a bit delicate down at that scale.
Yeah.
But you've got to be a little bit careful cutting the supports off. For example, one of the things that we do is our barrels tend to be separate pieces, which makes it super easy, even in a slicer, to just make them a bit thicker at those scales. So they got a little bit more heft and a little bit more robust. But yep, people have printed them right down at tiny scales. Seem very happy with them. So that gives you a range from about 1/300 all the way up to 1/48, which is huge.
Yeah.
What have we got? What have we got next? I touched upon pre-supports. Is there anything else we need to say about pre-supports?
My life's all about supports.
You lucky man.
I'm sure everybody here knows that Bob is the sculptor of the vehicles, but in our process, when Bob sculpts, he hands the sculpt over to me, and it's my job to do the supports, do the test print. And what I should do one day is post the picture of my workshop for printing. I have absolute piles and piles and piles of 15, 20, and 28 millimeter vehicles. So
we'd like to see that, Brad. Actually,
I should. Oh, I have just crates of it. I hate to say it, but I've just thrown stuff away. I just have too much, and I know it's crazy. You wouldn't believe what
how much time and effort I put into those things, and you're throwing them away.
Every vehicle imagine this, every vehicle that you sculpt, Bob, probably gets printed 3 times. And that's every version, every, stowed version gets printed probably at least 3 times. So I do the initial supports and I print it off to see what I missed, what the problem was. I'll come back, I'll resupport it and print it again. Then I'll put it into the 20 mil, 15 mil, and print all those again to make sure they print correctly. And so in doing that, it's just a print farm. I have a series of printers just trying to keep up with all the tests to make sure everything prints right. But hopefully, in the end, that means that our customers can get these files, put them on their slicer, and send it to the machine, and be printing as soon as they get them. Ultimately, that's a goal. And anybody who's been with us from the beginning can see the difference between my supports in the beginning and my supports today. I've learned a lot about printing when you do this kind of volume. It's crazy. And even when we do the core models, I still do that kind of testing and printing for all the models that come along with the stretch goals. So talking about the stretch goals, Bob, give us a little bit more insight about the stretch goals for this Kickstarter.
Oh, a bit of insight, you reckon? Well, we could go through them. Let me just talk a little bit about the selection process. In fact, it's probably worth talking about the selection process for the models anyway.
Yeah.
Now, Brad and I are both gamers. Yeah. Brad does skirmish. I mean, somebody has to. And I play proper battles with large armies.
Proper battles.
Battles. Yeah, that'd be the one. But both of us have a really keen sense of what we need to fulfill and use on the tabletop. So that our selection process is basically, well, okay, so we're going to do early Soviets or we're going to do the Iraqis. What do we need to put on the table? Yeah, what's good? And that really broadly depends. There are core models, and I mean core as in core to the army, not necessarily core to the Kickstarter in this particular case. There are core models that every gamer needs. So you'll always find a tank and an APC, probably an artillery piece, maybe a recce vehicle. That's the bread and butter stuff. Yeah. But there's also the things that are hard to source that you don't see very often. That if you do big battles, you need like radio vehicles and HQs and those sorts of things. So when we're selecting both our core models and our stretch goals, we try to give you what you're going to need to get an actual army on the tabletop. This is why there's a forward observer vehicle in this in the stretch goals, the 1V18, BTR-60 1V18. It's the forward observer vehicle that's deployed with towed artillery batteries. And we've got an air liaison vehicle, the R975M in this particular case. Again, because you want to do a big battle, you want to be able to control your air support. The lists require you to have a liaison vehicle. We've got the absolute correct liaison vehicle. So, yeah, we're thinking of you. We're thinking of gamers and what you guys actually need when we pick which models we choose. Hey, I think we've got to our last question, haven't we, Brad? Number 10. Look at our timing. Our timing is going to be perfect.
Yeah.
So, one thing I really like, or I think is really required, you can do the best paint job, but if you've not got any decals to go on it, it makes a vehicle look bad. So talk about what we've done with District Miniatures, Brad.
All right. Well, District Miniatures, I can't thank them enough for really approaching us about decals, because one of the things that I've been missing putting these vehicles together from the beginning is decals. Even if it's just a set of numbers on the side. Oh, I really like the naval Soviet decal though, but these decals just bring it to life. I mean, they really, really do. And so we teamed up with District Miniatures to put these decals together. Now, secretly, he does all the work, right? I don't know what team up means, but he sees what we're going to make. He gets a preview of the Kickstarter, so he knows what models we're doing. He puts together all of the numbers. He puts together the flags, all the decals. He has some great decal sheets for the Vietnam tanks, right? And a lot of this is hard to find because I've looked for this forever. He also does it in the different scales. So 15 mil, 28 mil. I don't know if he does 20. He can if you ask him. If it's something you're dying to do, I'm sure he could scale it down for you and put it together. He does a fabulous job. The decals are high quality, easy to put on, and they just make the vehicles really, really pop. So I really appreciate the work that he does to put these decals together. District Miniatures, if you Google it, you'll find them, but there's a link in our Kickstarter that you can click to. You can order these decals now, so by the time that the Kickstarter is over, you have your models, you'll also have your decals, and you can paint up your army.
Yep, so you can get you will have your models, not more than 3 weeks after the Kickstarter finishes. Yeah, we're usually pretty good about getting them up. Might be a couple of stretch goals, will be a little bit later than that, but broadly you're going to get them. Just to be clear, the decals are not part of the Kickstarter. You have to go to District Miniatures.
Yeah.
Buy them.
And that's because there's postage and he sends them out and they're a physical thing and we don't do physical.
We don't do physical stuff now. That's nice electronic stuff.
Well, we have spent a half hour together with everybody. I really appreciate everybody came out and watched our live session here. It's always a lot of fun to talk about the models, the Kickstarter, and I will just clear up for everybody that probably has the number one question when this live stream goes on is what's our next Kickstarter? And I will repeat what we always say, which is we have a little bit of fun of keeping our Kickstarter schedule secret and what's going to be next is secret. And we release that on our Facebook group as we get a little bit closer, model by model. We always have fun with that. So we're not going to tell you today what our next Kickstarter is, but please support us. Head out there, check out our Kickstarter. If you've already backed us, then talk to your friends, your mates, have them back us too, so we can keep bringing you more and more models. Bob?
Yep. I'd repeat. I'd absolutely agree with all of that and repeat it. Where are we currently with our Kickstarter? What have we just unlocked? We're cracking along, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. We're cracking along. The first day was amazing. And we're at almost $14,000 US. I don't know what that is. It's probably $5, British, but we are almost to unlock the BTR 50 PU, which is the command version of the BTR 50, which I love. It has that twin little castle turret looking front to it that I think is neat. But the key to me, the next one is the T54. And I think the T54 is a very iconic vehicle. And I think that it's going to be key to unlock here.
Yeah, anybody who does early-ish Arab Israeli, that's the one you want.
Yeah, T54. Yeah,
T54. For sure. Right, good. And I suppose just to finally say, if you do a little bit of a calculation, I haven't done it, but I've done it for all the other ones. You are paying less than $4 a model, probably around $3. Okay, these models will never be this good value ever again. So get stuck in. Yeah.
Well, and it's probably also worth saying, not only are they great value, Bob, but these models won't be in our store for another year. We always wait approximately a year before we put models into our store, bringing a better value to the Kickstarter itself.
Yep, absolutely. We want our customers to be happy. We want our Kickstarter's customers to happy. Great models, great price.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for spending the time with us. And please pass on the news about the Kickstarter to everybody you can. Other than that, we appreciate you listening today. Thanks, everybody.
And you haven't got that long. It only lasts 2 weeks. Be quick.
Yeah, it's only 2 weeks.
Right. Lovely.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.